Welcome back, everybody. Glad you're here. Today, we're going to be having a quick discussion on forged versus MIM parts. And I don't have any notes. I'm just going to be talking sort of, off the cuff here, out of my experience with this topic. Got a few guns on the table to illustrate some points. So I just want to ask the question, why does it matter? And I'm going to tell you my opinion, my experience. This is not an end-all, be-all discussion. I'm just telling you where I come from. And mostly because people just have these wild binary extreme assumptions of what I say. Like, for instance, I've said in the past that if I had a T-Sauce and a Colt or a Springfield on the table and both cost the same money, man, on a functional, practical level, the T-Sauce is going to be the better gun for one simple reason. It's all forged stuff. And this really matters, especially if you're talking about a hard use, high round count, long-term intended pistol, concealed carry, all that good stuff. But see, then what people do is they draw a straight line to, well, you must believe all MIM sucks. Or people get really confused when I have replaced a forged part for a MIM part. And they're like, but you said only forged. I never said only forged. So I want to clarify all that and tell you what I actually believe about it, why I think it matters, where I think it doesn't. And let's just have like a level-headed, calm discussion about this. So you have three sort of main categories, and gosh, there's so many subcategories. We're not going to be exhaustive today. But you have forged, cast, and MIM. And let's just go through briefly each of these things. So cast is essentially there's molten metal, it is put in a form, and it is cast. We talk about like lead bullet casting, right? It is a literal aluminum or steel cast. The molten metal is shot in there, and it is cast into a rough shape, usually machined post that process to get it to a closer shape, but that's about it. It works. It's fine. People have been making cast guns for a long time, and they're still around. That's perfectly acceptable. Now, you have some drawbacks with cast. Essentially, you can have cast voids. That you can get imperfections. One side of the cast may be not as consistent as the other. Just funny little things happen. And then on top of that, it just, in terms of longevity, does not last as long as a proper forged and machined product. Now let's jump over to forged and machined. Essentially what you have, and this is something T-Sauce advertises really nicely. They say they have this little tag or sticker in their boxes when you get a gun from them that says forged before machining. And why does that matter? Well, basically, if you were to forge a gun, if you were to machine a gun to shape and then forge it, it can twist and contort and shrink and do all sorts of funny things, and now your dimensions are gone, right? So that's a lot more challenging to do that. So what they do is they take their raw material or their rough cut product, forge it, heat treat it, and then machine it to shape so that you have a consistent, solid product. This is the most excellent way to do your stuff because, man, you just get a consistent, hard use product that just lasts a lot longer. Then you have MIM, which is machine injection molded, and usually this is where they're taking some sort of like an ore, powdery, sandy sort of thing. It's put into a machine and it, heats up, makes a mold of that product, and is usually, again, machined post. And that's fine. A huge number of companies use MIM. Now, here's the deal. The most expensive of the three is forged, especially if you're going to heat treat and then machine, because, those machines, those bits and all those lasers and everything are going to be working harder and for longer on those machines to get through that hardened material. Therefore, it increases cost. You have expendables that go up. You've got tooling that wears out. And this is why a lot of companies opt for MIM parts, because it's significantly cheaper to produce this stuff. Let's talk about why it even matters. Does it matter? Well, first of all, yes, it matters. How much? And it really, you have to figure for your own value system, how much does it matter? Because I can't decide that for you. I can tell you how much it means to me. For some people, it really doesn't matter that much because they don't shoot that much. They don't ask that much of their firearms. And that's not a criticism. That's just a reality. And look, everybody's different. Some people, they think that they're going to have like a lone survivor experience and they're going to fall down a mountain and get into a big old gunfight. And they go wild and come up with really fancy stories. Most people are like, okay, maybe I'm going to go to the gun club like once or twice a month. I'm going to put a couple hundred rounds through the gun. I'm going to carry it. The worst thing this gun's ever going to see is like me sweating on it in the summer. Okay, well then MIM's probably fine for you, right? But everybody's values are different. And so let me just tell you a little bit about my experience with MIM versus forged and cast and all that. And then you can make your own determination for how much that matters. And let's start with, say, the Colt 1991. So I've had this gun for a few months now, and you guys saw my video on it. And in that video, I decided to go ahead and run the stock sear and disconnector. And for those of you who don't know, Colt for, about 30 or 40 years has been using MIM internals and externals too. A lot of their stuff is MIM. And sometimes it matters, sometimes it doesn't. I personally believe that when it comes to the sear and the disconnector, those should be the highest quality parts on the pistol, along with like the barrel, the slide, the frame. You can get away with a cast frame. I actually won't die on that hill. You can even get away with things like a stainless frame, like on the Kimber here. That's why I brought it. Is stainless optimal? Is it going to last as long as, say, a carbon steel forged frame? Nope. Like, that's just a fact. The answer is no. But does it matter that much? Not really. Look, I'm not on some freaking Delta squadron where I'm going to go out and burn 8,000 rounds in a couple days doing some training. That's just not my bag. So I ran the Colt stock parts for a while, but I said in that video that it felt like the sear was a little rounded. Turns out it was. I tried to address it, tried to stone it, clean it up. But here's the problem with that. When you're stoning those edges, technically you're taking away material. You're reducing the overall length of the sear. And then as you reduce the length, the hammer hooks now are being lowered, which means the hammer is going to cam and rotate. And now your dimension's off again. Because, think about it. The sear is here. The hammer hooks are here. You reduce the sear length. What happens? The hammer hooks are rotating. They're changing angle. Funny things start to happen. It's not so simple. And so the right thing to do is when the sear is worn, in my opinion, is just replace it. And that's what I did. So let's ask the question, does MIM matter? Well, I had to replace these parts. Now, I've shot this gun and carried it and really inspected it. And as I've gotten to know it, I am pretty convinced that this gun has somewhere around 6 to 9 or 10,000 rounds through it. It's been shot a good bit. It was carried a lot. If you guys go watch that video, probably one of the most disgusting used guns I've ever experienced. It was, whoever sent this to me should be embarrassed. It was really gross. But okay, so the gun got used a good bit and I had to replace some parts. Cost me $50-$60, right? I used Nighthawk parts and now they are, so crispy. Really, really beautiful break on that guy. Now, for some people, they're like, okay, so what? After 6 to 10,000 rounds, I got to rebuild the gun. You're absolutely right. That's a pretty low impact effect for using MIM parts. However, let me juxtapose that against, say, my Springfield. Now, I rebuilt this gun with Ed Brown. I think the old series that I used for them was Perfection. And they send a sear, disconnector, hammer. It's like a little package. You still have to do a little bit of fitting. But anyway, that's what I rebuilt this gun with. And probably 10,000 rounds ago is when I rebuilt that. It's still running the same sear and hammer. And let me tell you guys, this thing is as crispy and beautiful as the day I rebuilt it. Look, I'm sure if I put like a microscope on there, it's worn, but you can't tell. I can't tell. It is still ultra crisp, and this stuff is extremely hard, forged, machined stuff. So down the road, you retain that quality trigger pull. You retain the safety. That's a big one. Because look, when that sear gets rounded off, I don't know about you guys, that makes me sweat. I don't like that. So, when you just compare the two for a very small price increase of replacing some parts, you're getting longevity, you're getting safety, you're getting consistency. That's another one. How many of you have a trigger on your gun that you really like and you want to keep that trigger? Well, if it's MIM, the time is coming where the more you dry fire it, the more you shoot it, you're wearing that trigger pull away. It's going bye-bye. That's just a reality, okay? So, but ask the question, does it matter that much? Not really. Not really. In fact, on a lot of my GI guns in the past that have kind of crummy stock triggers, I replaced the sear with a Wilson Combat Factory Plus sear, and for one reason and one reason only. They're affordable. You can get them for like $15. And the angles on the sear are so perfect and consistent. It's a drop-in factory reset for your trigger pull. And they even advertise it as such. They'll basically tell you, like, this is a way to get your gun back to a factory trigger pull. And there's usually no creep. They're just super crispy, common, trigger weights, nothing wild or fancy. It's just a good, solid GI trigger. And people have wigged out on me for that because it is a MIM part. But, look, I have so many 1911s. I distribute my shooting amongst them pretty equally. And so no one gun is getting worn out that hard. And so for me, yeah, MIM, I'll make that exception because that's the trigger pull that I want. That's the feel that I want. But if it's a gun that I'm going to throw in my waistband, it's probably going to be a forged part. And that dovetails us into the breakage conversation, because when you go forged versus MIM, now let's just answer this question right off the bat. Do forged parts break? Obviously, duh. Like, that can obviously happen. Especially, it can even be more of a problem on a forged part if the part has been heat treated to be too brittle, too hard. And there is such a thing. You can make a piece of steel too hard to where, something sharp hits it at just the right speed and just the right angle. Yeah, you can shatter a piece of steel if it's too hard. I don't know the specific Rockwell hardness because each part is probably optimized at a different Rockwell hardness. But yeah, you can go too hard. Whereas maybe a MIM, yeah, it's going to be a little bit more of a Gumby part. It's a little bit more mushy, but that might be beneficial in certain applications because it has some give and it's not going to crack under hard use. Like things like, say, a firing pin retention plate back here. I have heard people breaking forged firing pin plates. Happens. Why? Well, because they're really hard, and look at where the wear mark is on that plate. It's right in the middle, cutting it in half, right? Let's look at another one. Where's that wear mark? Cutting it right in half. There's a little indentation into that plate. Let's look at the wear mark. Where's it at? It's cutting it right in half. So imagine you've got that hammer piercing the middle, cutting a divot into the middle of that thing. And if it's really hard, yeah, it could split right down the middle. Kind of makes sense. Whereas maybe if it was a quality MIM part, maybe that's less likely. Okay, so I'm not as absolutist on this as some people think I am. I try to be as objective as I can. Now, am I still going to choose forged? Yes, but properly forged, quality forged. Because that's another thing, man. The word forged is so vague. It's like, the word baked is about the same. Okay, somebody baked something. Okay, for at what temperature? In what type of oven? For how long? These things matter a great deal, right? So, when it comes to forged versus MIM'd, I'm not an absolutist. There are so many variables, even down to the type of steel, because not all carbon steel is steel. You can have different variations of carbon content in the steel, which causes it to behave differently. Especially nowadays, you get modern alloys. They're doing God knows what with these steels to try to get them harder. And then the same heat treatment process on, say, like a A 1070 piece of carbon steel is not going to behave as something that maybe they're peppering in some like D10 and chromium or whatever they're putting in these alloys. That same heat treatment is going to behave differently on the alloy. And so, look, I guess the point I'm getting at is it's not worth getting in the weeds. All I'm saying is, in general, forged tends to last longer than MIM parts, but doesn't matter that much. Well, it can, but again, you have to apply this to your own set of values. So for me, I buy guns with MIM parts all the time, and I brought the Kimber, or as some people call it, the Mimber. This gun is slap full of MIM parts. I mean, the magazine release, the thumb safety, the slide stop, the grip safety, like every single part on this gun, minus maybe the hammer, slide, barrel, and frame were MIM, including the sear and disconnector. I'm sure of it. Does that matter to me? Not a whole lot. Not really. I mean, I've safety checked the gun. I've inspected it. The sear's got loads of life left in it. It's not at all rounded off. Everything looks fine. Now, here's the thing, though. I have friends, one guy in particular, he has had 2 parts breakages on a Kimber because they're MIM parts. He's sheared right off a thumb safety, and he's had a slide stop pin break right in half mid-firing. It happens. And this is kind of the same thing with cast, where you can have voids and imperfections and things don't happen just right internally on those parts. You can have that with MIM too. Absolutely. You get some little void in there, and think about how much force the slide stop pin is taking. It's kind of the heart of the pistol, holding the whole pistol together as it reacts and recoils. Well, if you have an imperfection right in the wrong spot, absolutely can break right off. Now, I think the easiest way around this is, here's just the cheap, not cheap, the greasy, quick way to get around this problem. Buy the gun you like, replace it with quality parts, or replace the parts with quality parts. There you go. Problem solved, right? Discussion over with. But for some people, they have sort of a, autistic-ish ism about that. They want the gun to be perfect, quote-unquote, out of the box. For me, I'm not that guy. Like, I will buy the gun that I like. I'll tune it the way I want. I'll put in the parts that, make it right for me, to my standard, and I move right on down the road. But everybody's values are different. Now, where I will say, objectively, it matters a great deal. You need to have, in my opinion, you need to have a quality barrel. That really matters. People have been shocked to know that, this Springfield's, technically it was on its 3rd barrel. Let me clarify this. This gun has had 3 barrels in it. The first barrel I wore out at like 6,000 or 7,000 rounds. And people ask me, like, how is that possible? I don't know, dude. Go ask Springfield. Like, you have to understand, the early 2000s for Springfield, for their barrels, they're garbage. Like, they're trash barrels. They are very poorly fitted. They're 2-piece soldered barrels. God knows what the steel is. I don't even know if they're heat treated. They're junk barrels. So people like come at me like I have to explain why Springfield barrels didn't last as long. I'm like, hey, how about get off me? And I have no idea. I'm just telling you what happened. But yeah, 6,000 or 7,000 rounds, I had to replace the barrel. And I just bought the same barrel off Midway years and years ago. Dropped it in. No fitting. You can see the bushing on this thing is like the worst fit bushing that's ever existed. It's super loosey-goosey. But why does that matter? Why does a quality barrel matter? Well, one is accuracy. We all want a good, accurate gun. But two, like, I don't like that I wore out a barrel in 6,000 or 7,000 rounds either. I think that's hot garbage, right? So I think the barrel needs to be of the highest quality. I think the slide needs to be of very good quality. That slide's taken a lot of abuse. The frame, again, it can be cast, but it needs to be really well done. Like a Caspian. I would trust a Caspian. Their frames are cast. I wouldn't blink at that. No problem. A Rock Island, I have it in writing from Arms Corps that their frames are not even fully heat treated. They spot heat treat their cast frames. That to me is a huge red flag. I'm not a fan of aluminum frames. I'm sorry, I'll die on this hill. Aluminum does not last as long as carbon steel. And anybody who's going to say otherwise, I'm sorry. That's a wild thing to state. And boy, you better have something to back it up with. And not some anecdotal dude who like made super light semi-wad cutter hand loads for 20 years and shot it on an aluminum frame. That I'm not listening to. I'm talking like regular factory ammo over tens of thousands of rounds. I'm sorry, that aluminum frame will not last the same length of time or wear the same way as a carbon steel frame. So that frame needs to be hard too. Now, for me, I think you need to have a new quality MIM sear or a forged one. Again, I just have enough experiences where those old sears start to round off. Like, in fact, I wish I would have brought it out for this video. I have the original sear that came with this mil spec, and it's in a little Ziploc bag in my parts box that says destroyed, so that I don't put it in anything. And I keep that sear to show people, hey, here's why MIM matters. It would have been really smart if I would have got that out for this video. But yes, MIM parts wear faster. Fact. It's just a fact. Does it matter? It does to me. You know, I mean, for instance, if I buy a MIM part like a sear, and I have, you know, I'm probably just going to go ahead and swap that guy out at like 2,000 or 3,000 rounds. Whether it's super worn or not. They're cheap enough, $15. Say what you want about that, but I want the gun to be safe, and I want to have consistency in my trigger. That's just me. So does the forged thing really matter? It does, but you need to decide how much. But at the end of the day, what it really comes down to is longevity and likelihood of catastrophic parts breakage. Those are the two big ones when it comes to MIM versus forged and cast. Can it be done right and better? You know, of course, there's companies that do, and there's some guys who like blow in sideways and get super angry when I say this MIM part is better than that MIM part. And they make super weird statements like there's no such thing as better. I'm like, okay, I'm in manufacturing. Yes, there is such thing as better. Like when you don't keep your machines up, when you're using a substandard material to start with, when you're, you know, not doing certain safety checks, or maybe your temperature variances are drifting, and like, yes, there is such a thing as better. That's a really unintelligent statement, in my opinion. So anyway, what I just wanted to do is have a discussion and tell you a little bit about my mileage with these guns, and just say, look, it does matter. Forged is better. MIM is fine. It's not going to last as long, and you know, you need to decide how much that means for you. For some people, what matters more to them is having, say, an American Colt or Springfield and having MIM parts than having a quality forged gun and it's from Turkey. And okay, I'm not going to fight you about it. I'm not going to call you names about it. I understand. I really do. I appreciate that. I understand that sentiment. I'm probably going to lean towards forged most of the time if I can. Now, I will say this, and I'll conclude the video with this. If I only had one gun, like this is the gun that I'm going to train with, I'm going to carry, it's at my bedside, it's in my vehicle, it's my gun, the one, I'm going forged all the way. There is no question. That's a much different conversation, because the critical nature of that gun's longevity, consistency, and toughness goes way up, because I don't have a backup. I don't have any way to spread out the load of my training on these guns. So that's my mileage. If you really want to get a feel for the difference between forged and MIM, go on Midway USA or Brownells or any of these sites and just buy two versions of the same part. I recommend like a Wilson Combat Factory Plus or one of their other MIM sears, and then get a bulletproof sear and simply take a file to both of them. Destroy them, right? Go ahead and plan on spending $50 just to learn something, and put a file to them and just feel how hard it is to affect the forged sear and feel how shockingly easy it is to affect the MIM sear. You're going to be really surprised. And if you don't think that that translates to a different wear pattern and longevity of life, you're crazy. Genuinely crazy. So anyway, there's the discussion. Hope you guys enjoyed that. Hope it clarified some things for you. And we will see you on the next one.